Swimming like a shark in a shrimp tank. Big fish, small pond in the shrimp tank.
Welcome back to another episode of the Shrimp Tank. We come to you virtually from Seattle and the entire hot and steamy Pacific Northwest. It's been a little bit warm here, but that's August for you. Listen, if you want to learn how to start, grow, or run a successful business, you're in the right place. This is the podcast for you. This is where we say street smarts and book smarts collide. Hello again, everyone. I'm Dan Weedin, and I'm joined by my co-host, Monica Blackwood. Our guest today is another Blackwood, and they might know each other. We're going to be talking with her husband, Clay Blackwood. Clay is a seasoned educator. His experience extends beyond traditional academics. He's a certified instructor in CPR, first aid, and notably mental health first aid. What makes Clay's approach stand out is his ability to intertwine technical knowledge with real-world scenarios, ensuring that his students, whether they be young or old, leave with a genuinely applicable skill. But Clay's talents aren't confined to the classroom. On the athletic front, he's an acclaimed coach, recently guiding the North Kitsap High School Vikings softball team to an undefeated season, 25-0, and the state championship. Whether he's on the field, in a classroom, or training individuals in life-saving techniques, Clay Blackwood exemplifies the passion and dedication of a true educator. Clay, welcome. We're glad to have you. We'll be right with you. Everyone, you can find us wherever you get your podcasts. We're on iHeartRadio, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, SoundCloud, Stitcher, and YouTube. I like to tell everybody we are ubiquitous. And now, open for business, our patron membership, the Shrimp Peelers, offering exclusive content to grow your business and enrich your life. You'll find access on our website at shrimptankpodcast.com/Seattle. Now, before we bring on Clay, hello there, Monica.
Hey, Dan, how's it going?
It's going well. It's going well. I think this is going to be a historic podcast. It's the first that I can know of. I mean, we've had husband and wives on before, but they own the business together, which you do as well. I guess you're the president, but I've never had a spouse on as a guest being grilled. I mean, interviewed by the co-host. So very excited about that. Hey, listen, I want to tell you something.
How long our relationship lasts after this.
Yeah, we'll see about that. You probably saw this because I posted ubiquitously on Facebook. I just had my 40th class reunion for high school. That's almost jaw-dropping to me. It was amazing. I grew up in Whidbey Island, north end of Whidbey Island, in Oak Harbor. We had a great turnout for the 40th. We probably had 75, 80 people there, which nowadays I think is pretty good. And it was a lot of fun. And what amazed me, Monica, is the ability for all of my friends that I have. Some of them I hadn't seen in 40 years, some in 30, all runs the gamut, to be able to just seamlessly walk back into conversations. I think there's two parts to that. Number one is that, we all grew up together. There's most of us, even in a Navy town, we all grew up from grade school on. But I think there's a second part, and it comes with Facebook and social media, that we're all connected there as well. And I see what other people's going on in their lives, and they see mine. And I think it just makes it easy to kind of move into genuine conversations. I've got a question for you from an HR perspective. Businesses that have 10, 15, 25, 30, 50, 80 employees, something like that, that's who we're talking to. Is it a good idea? Does it help or hinder social media? Does it help to have that extra level of communication among employers or co-workers as it does with my classmates from the reunion?
Well, it's definitely a double-edged sword. If you think back a couple of decades ago, where people would walk into the door, do their job and their work, and they walk out, and there may not have been as much interaction amongst coworkers, so to speak, outside of the office. Now, nobody checks their life at the door when they go into work anymore. And so people are already, whether you're in the office or remotely, they're already talking about what's going on in their life overall. Facebook or social media, Instagram, all of that, that just adds another layer of detail to it. And certainly it does bring some cohesiveness together and allows people to be really interested in what folks have going on outside of the employer walls, so to speak. On the flip side, it can be something that suddenly triggers some sort of workplace situation that you have to deal
Right.
with, as somebody posted something that somebody else doesn't like. And so being friends or connections on social media certainly brings about both sides of the coin, and employers are still trying to figure out how to deal
Yeah.
with it all along the way.
Well, it's interesting because in the scenario I gave you with my friend, if somebody didn't like something, we could break up. Basically, we could break up and go our own ways and unfriend or whatever. Yeah, that's not so simple in a workplace situation. Listen, Monica, I think I've actually known Clay longer than you. We go back to 1999 when I first started coaching at North Kitsap. Clay was already there. I think we've known each other longer. I think I met you through him. Clay, first of all, welcome. Thank you for being here. We're excited to talk with you. And as Monica and I talk about this whole social media thing, it made me actually think, there's a lot of mental health issues surrounding this. You have been a coach, you've been an instructor in first aid and CPR. I'm curious, how did you get involved in wanting to teach others, specifically adults, in a workplace about mental health first aid?
Well, kind of actually started with my wife, teaching CPR for as many years as I had, and still do for over 20 years. She had an opportunity and they offered it at her old work where she used to work, and she said, "Hey, we should go take this class." It was fairly new at that time. I said, "Sure, let's go take it." So we took it together, and she just kept telling me, you should teach this. And several years went by, and sure enough, I kept thinking about it, and talked about. And thank you for having me, by the way. Don't forget those pleasantries. And so I decided to finally scrounge up the funding to make it happen. And as I was talking with my boss at OC, we were also thinking about putting a class together to teach it as a 1-credit class as well. So kind of combining two worlds there. And so I decided to go ahead, let's go for it. Let's get the instructor certificate. And we, it happened to be when the pandemic hit. So that was kind of a little bit of the challenge, but we made it happen. And I've been teaching it ever since through the college mainly. And then of course out in the community through West Sound Workforce. So it's a great course. It's got a lot of just basic skills for how to help somebody going through a mental challenge or mental crisis. And we can talk more about that as we go.
Yeah. So I'm curious though. It was something that I suggested, and you and I have had our emotional situations that play into the mental health. How often do you see when you're going into the workplace? How often do you see this coming up, or people being hesitant or excited about it? What's the response that you get when you go into a business and say, "Hey, I'm gonna teach"?
It's really actually every time I talk about it, excuse me, every time I talk about mental health first aid, I'm surprised actually with how big it's gotten in the last 23 years since it's been around. Actually, it's been about a little less than that in the US, but and still so many people don't know about it. And when they hear it, they're like, "Oh, that sounds like a wonderful course." And when we tell them it's kind of like taking a CPR class, it's really structured in that same setting where we learn basic skills, but people really enjoy the content. I think it gives them some confidence to be able to have conversations, reframe some stigmas and way you talk about how you use words and such, and when having conversations with somebody that might be going through a challenge. But it just gives them some, I guess, lack of a better word, support. And after taking the class and earning a certificate, to say, "Hey, I can have these conversations from a different level now and help somebody that might be in need." And I think people really enjoy that because we we like to help people. I think in general, I think humans like to be helpers when they can. So.
Yeah, Clay, I've never taken a class. I want you because I'm really intrigued. Tell me, you walk into a business and I don't know, let's just say there's 25, 30 employees and you walk into the business. What is the ideal size for the class? Is that a class that, okay, we're going to have 2 sessions? What is the ideal size? I think, like, I know with first aid CPR, you could probably have as many people as there are, the Annies there to do CPR on. What about this?
So currently, like with a single instructor, they like to keep, especially like I do a lot of the virtual ones where I'm doing Zoom, much like this, and they do the pre-work and blended learning online. If I do a class in person, it's usually a good full 8-hour day, and classes minimum's 5. For a single instructor, if you're above 20, they recommend having a second person that's taken the class at least, if not a second instructor, just more because there could be conversations or topics that you talk about within the curriculum that could be triggering for somebody. And so we want to make sure we have somebody that can help support. So they're really, the program itself, the organization itself is really kind of laid it out well to make sure they're covering their basis and not putting somebody into a trigger, and make sure we have the support needed. And currently I'm in a single instructor because I teach 15 is my max for my college one. And that's just based on the type of instruction I'm doing. But 20 is probably a good number. If you have more than that, it's nice to have a second instructor just for those needs.
So you mentioned that the program's been in the US for a little over 20 years. Tell us a little bit more about the structure and the origins of where this started.
Well, actually, I'm going to give you some detailed information. So it actually started in Australia in 2000. I'm going to read from a book here I got. And actually came to the U.S. in 2008 through the National Council for Mental Behavioral Health. And they started the USA version of it, and it's all the same materials, but and they've continued to just revamp what they do, and their manual is all evidence-based, and they put together a really, really good program. But since 2008, they've been in the U.S.
Great. And this doesn't remind me, like when you do a CPR first aid class, you don't become a doctor, right?
No.
What happens when you take a mental health first aid class?
Great question. Really, it's designed to help, just like CPR first aid, you get basic knowledge. And I say that many times in class. Is we're not here. It's not a group therapy. It's not, you don't become counselors or psychiatrists or psychologists. You're here to learn basic skills, how to have basic conversations with somebody that could be going through something, like somebody that's been injured. You're making sure you're getting permission. You're making sure you help at a basic need, because I'm not a doctor either, and I wouldn't do something above my scope of my CPR training as well. So I'm not doing anything that's going above any bounds.
So Clay, I would think if I was an employer and I had you come in or on Zoom and do this, one of the things that I think would also be important to me, and you can tell me if it is for others, is the identification of problems. It's one thing to be able to help somebody who says, I'm in need of help. I need help. This is happening in my life. I need somebody to talk to, whatever. That's I'm sure part of it. But I would think there are people who are not willing to be vulnerable, not willing to ask for help. It might actually be that's probably the largest part of it. Does it help employers and coworkers to identify someone who might be in need and may not even know it themselves?
Absolutely. It's a great point. And I talk about it a lot in class, and all instructors I'm sure do. I call it just noticing. I think it increases our noticing ability to recognize maybe signs or symptoms, because we talk a lot about signs and symptoms. Are we noticing changes in our coworkers, their behaviors? Are they coming in late now? Are they not showing up to coffee like they do every day? And then all of a sudden you're starting to see just changes in their moods or in their patterns. That could be a sign, and a very early sign, that something could be happening and going on. So it could be as simple as, hey, everything going okay? Would you like to go to coffee and talk? but it also could be escalated because you didn't see the signs earlier. So I think that's exactly what it's designed for, is to start to recognize what's going on and recognize the people around us and seeing the things that might be happening in somebody's life outside of the workplace that could be causing what's going on inside the workplace as well.
So from a target market standpoint, if you're going into a business to teach this class, what level of individuals are you targeting? Are you targeting their top leadership, or are you targeting the middle managers, or who is it that is best for taking this class?
I think I think anybody. I know a couple businesses I've been in so far. We've kind of targeted more of the HR professionals, the supervisors, those types of folks, and they can help trickle that down. But I think it'd be good for those folks that are working the floor or working, the people that are everydayers that are around and talking to everybody all the time. At the college, it's a bag of whoever signs up, so it could be someone that just needs a credit. But I think it's just helpful to have. But I think it's a great course for all levels. And companies, it's always good to have that HR folks and those that are kind of supervisors kind of start with that and then trickle down from there. I think is always good.
Well, Clay, for us, we got to trickle down to a commercial break to pay the bills. We're going to take a short break to hear from today's Spotlight sponsor. And when we come back with our guest, Clay Blackwood, for a Hot or Not section of the show, we're going to talk about how virtual work affects mental health. Don't walk away. We'll be right back with more of the Shrimp Tank. Do you know where great people go to meet great companies? I do. It's West Sound Workforce. For 25 years, West Sound Workforce has been putting people to work, matching their skills and interests with positions employers are looking to fill right here in our own communities. Specializing in temp to hire, and direct hire placement services, West Sound Workforce is there to help job seekers looking to find their next position or their next career step with no cost. Companies partner with West Sound Workforce to augment their recruitment strategies, whether to cover the shift of a vacationing employee of their own, having extra hands to make a special project happen, or searching for their next new team member. Visit our website at westsoundworkforce.com or check us out on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn.
And welcome back to the Shrimp Tank, where we interview the best and brightest CEOs and business thought leaders, sorry about that, in the greater Puget Sound area and beyond. I'm Monica Blackwood, and our guest today is a guy that I'm kind of fond of. His name is Clay Blackwood. For our next segment, Hot or Not. All
right, Clay, this is where this is where Monica, see, I got Michelle and I got Monica, and they're both MBs as co-hosts. So it really plays with my ability to do that. Monica, my apologies. This is where Monica and I pepper you with questions about business, about life, maybe even about coaching. You're going to tell us whether it's hot or not, then why or why not. And I'm afraid at the end you win absolutely nothing, but let's hope you have some fun. I'm going to try to see how I can put this into a hot or not question. Obviously, this came out well before COVID. However, I've got to think that COVID accelerated or made this even more known, made mental health more known. And now people are working virtually or in hybrid situations. So hot or not, dealing with mental health issues for people who are working in a virtual capacity.
I think it's a hot topic because it's just, again, I think we've lost some connection pieces that I think we need. Yeah.
No, not you. I was letting Monica know I have I have a follow-up.
My bad.
No, that's okay.
I think just the virtual, and although there's some great stuff in that with the work and family life, but I think some of it also is making some challenges when it comes to mental health as well.
How do you then coach or guide a business owner who may have a number of people working virtually and some working from an office? Maybe they have everybody working virtually. What is your suggestion for them? How do you guide them in saying, this is how you deal with something that is so personal in maybe a very impersonal platform?
Yeah, I think the harder part probably in the virtual platform is being able to recognize things, what's going on if you're not connected as much in more of that physical way. So that makes it a lot more challenging. So if you are in those Zoom settings where you're going to see them and have that quote face-to-face contact, then hopefully you can just pay attention to what's going on. And I think you might have to do some other reach out on a more continual basis, just to see how people are doing. Maybe it's coming in for other events and just check-ins, and just in general, that social time where it's not on a screen. Hey, we're going to have a company event, and you're starting to get those people in, just to really see where people are at. And again, it's not like we're trying to pry into people's lives, but if our workers aren't doing well, then of course the work's not going to be good. So that kind of is the challenge. And virtual has got to be even more of a challenge.
I think you brought up a really great point, actually, with the virtual aspect and not physically being there, because like right now, I have a fake background, right? And you have no idea what my physical space looks like, and it could be garbaged up to the hilt, or it could be spick and span. Both of those things can be really healthy, and both of those things can be not healthy, depending on my my aptitude for leaning one way or another, and being able to balance that from an emotional and mental health standpoint. So I think that's a really great point to bring up. I'm going to switch though and ask you. It's still related to mental health in a weird way, and I think your answer will explain it. But hot or not, having stuffed animal mascots.
Definitely hot. Mental First Aid has their koala, because it was the whole program was born in Australia, and they have their koala named Algae, and Algae is part of the program. It's the nonlinear pathways of how to, kind of like CPR's check, call, care. It's the pathway of kind of helping somebody, and so that's the name of the koala is Algae. And we both talked about bringing Algae, and I didn't, and she didn't. So, but that's their mascot, and I think it's good to have that. Kind of gives a face to the name a little bit. So.
All right, I'm gonna switch off a little bit from the mental health, because you've done a lot of first aid and CPR work as well, and I think we've obviously in offices have heard about the importance of that. But I bring this up for a specific reason. Hot or not, Clay, AEDs in every office building and facility.
They're definitely hot. Just simply every minute that goes by is about a 10% chance a person won't survive from a heart attack, and having that ready available is definitely a time saver and potential help for that person that's suffering from a heart attack and needs the AED. And again, I'm not an expert or a doctor, but I know having them around, having them accessible is definitely a big help, and just saves time. Definitely hot.
So hot or not, what about being prepared when the weather is hot? And does it matter what time of year the weather is hot?
No, it's, and again, we have these conversations all the time in class about it can be a 70-degree day and sunny, and you're in your car and it'll get to 100 plus, and somebody can suffer from heat stroke on a cool day. Vice versa, can have hypothermia on a warm day with wind and water and wet, and it's all kinds of different things. So yes, being prepared for something like this, prepping, even days before. So I talk to my athletes about that a lot, is that it's not the day of that you try to prepare for hydration. It's the 2-3 days before, trying to have your body prepared for when you know you're going to be out in high heat. And of course, just people being responsible and paying attention to how their families are doing, and their kids and their athletes. That's an important thing, because it doesn't take high heat to make heat stroke happen.
Yeah, so hydrate, everybody, hydrate. I've got my water here as well, hydrating. I think, Clay, when we look at first aid CPR, which has been around a long time, and I think employers get it, depending on the industry. So if you're a contractor, you have kind of an idea of Yeah, we're looking at slips and falls, or we're looking at tripping hazards, or we're looking at broken bones, or if you're in the restaurant industry, obviously trips and falls or burns, things like that. You can really identify some hot topics, so to speak. What are the biggest concerns in mental health right now? What are the topics that your class teaches where your participants are most concerned about? And as a follow-up, do different industries have different mental health needs like they would in first aid?
I don't know if they particularly have different needs. The course really goes from just noticing just changes in people, kind of a mental health challenge where they just had, whatever's going on in their life or whatever's happening could be just a challenge where it is need somebody to talk to. And we talk about, we go into in the program, some of the disorders, substance abuse. Again, it's in a more of a broader sense, simply because, I'm not a mental health expert. I'm just a mental health first aid instructor. We talk about psychosis and kind of what that looks like to give you a sense of what somebody might be going through at that time. There's and Monica's been through this one. It's the hallucination and with somebody, and using 3 people to kind of work through that and just kind of get a sense of somebody that might be having voices and in how they're trying to function in life. So it's a broad range of things we discussed from how do you help somebody that's in not severe crisis all the way up to severe crisis, and what are the kind of steps, and when do we get professionals involved, and those types of things. So I think any organization really could use it because we don't know what everybody's life is like. And so that I think it doesn't matter necessarily industries, I wouldn't think. And there's probably some that get a little more stressors than others, but I think it's still relevant for all.
Would you say in your teachings, kind of building off of this, would you say in your classes that folks seem most dialed in on kind of the depression, anxiety, even suicide aspects, and then the psychosis part of it is newer to them, or what do you see?
Yeah, I'm glad you said those words. I couldn't get them come to my head. Is the depression, anxiety, those. But I think the psychosis is something a little newer as far as bringing it to the forefront and having those conversations out loud versus not having those conversations. People not wanting to talk about that. Using that C word, the crazy, and we don't want to use those words. But being able to just say this is what somebody could be going through. And we might not know, or we might know depending on how close we are to the person. But I think that's something that's getting out in the forefront. I think it's a big thing of mental health first aid as well, is changing the tone out there in the public about it is okay to talk about mental health, because mental health doesn't mean that you're going down a rabbit hole. It just might mean, hey, everybody struggles with it. 1 in 5 adults, goes through it in a year. They go through some sort of mental health crisis or just challenge, and it could be very small or it could be very big. Just really depends on what's going on in their lives.
So Clay, that most of my career has been built around helping businesses be proactive and preventive. I got to believe that if you knew that a coworker had an event in their life, maybe they lost a loved one, maybe they had a financial upset of some sort, something that could trigger, depression or an anxiety or something like that. Are there ways that the workplace can be proactive in being helpfor before something starts escalating?
Yeah, my wife's gonna like this one. Talk to your EAP. Yeah, I mean, it's a great way. I mean, there's resources already in most workplaces that are out there. Again, if an organization's had training like mental health first aid, then you have more people that can kind of have some general conversations than somebody's going through.
Well, Clay, you have to say it, Dr. What?
Oh, I had said talk to the EAPs.
What is an EAP?
Monica, you have to tell me the full term.
It's the Employee Assistance Program.
Right.
Okay. Yeah,
Yep.
I didn't know that acronym. I'm guessing maybe somebody
Really?
else didn't either. So do you want to
No,
jump
good.
onto that before we go to break? Do you want to add, kind of add on to that,
I'll jump in
Monica?
there. I'll jump in. So EAPs, huge thing. A lot of times in your healthcare benefits, providers will have an EAP benefit in there as well. And sometimes companies have that as kind of an add-on policy, but they are huge and they are designed to provide resources for your employees to access help, whether it be oftentimes it's because they need to see a professional to work through their mental and emotional states that they've got going on. Maybe they have a short-term crisis that they're trying to deal with, or they've got something longer term. But and it's huge, and it helps with workplace issues. It helps with personal issues. Family dynamics, all of that sort of stuff. But EAPs are huge, and they really don't cost all that much. So if you're an employer and you don't have an EAP, I suggest you jump on that and take a look right away.
Wow, and that's a great segue because we're going to turn up the heat here pretty soon on Clay. He may need to call an EAP or plead the fifth. So we're going to take a short break to hear from our sponsors first. But when we come back with Clay Blackwood for our plead the fifth section of the show, I've got a question that I just love asking when I have a husband and wife spouses team on. So I'm not going to spill any of it. I'm not going to tease it out. They're both going to have to wait. Don't walk away. We'll be right back with more of the Shrimp Tank. And Plead the Fifth is brought to you by our corporate sponsors, Ideal Life 360, Cornerstone Financial, First Underwriters Insurance, BC Fitness Studio, Port Ludlow Resort, and Upstart Group. Please visit our website at www.shrimptankpodcast.com/Seattle to learn more about these terrific companies. Now back to the show.
Welcome back to the Shrimp Tank, where we interview the best and brightest CEOs and business thought leaders in the greater Pacific Northwest Puget Sound area and beyond. I'm co-host Monica Blackwood. Our guest today is Clay Blackwood for our next segment, Plead the Fifth.
So Clay, you'll get to plead the fifth once on these questions. Monica and I are going to pepper you with them, or you can plead the fifth, but you can only do it once. So you got to be careful. I'm going to throw, I don't think it's a fastball. I think it could be, maybe a little bit of a curveball, and we'll see how you answer it. So everybody has one. I know they do, whether they admit it or not. Clay, plead the fifth. Who is your celebrity crush?
Oh man. Let's see. Gosh, I got several actually. No.
Okay, look, you can name as many as you want. I go for you. Name as many. Monica might even know who they are.
Oh yeah.
I do.
I've always Sandra Bullock has always been one. Julia Stiles, is that her last name? Julia Stiles is one too. Yeah, they're probably the two. There's probably other ones too. I just never remember names. But
Sandra Bullock's solid. That's a solid. That's been one of mine too. So she's been one. So that's a good call right there. So we're off and running on Plead the Fifth. Monica, I can't wait to hear your Plead the Fifth for him.
I plead the fifth. Well, I would like to know his reaction to the word impossible.
impossible.
Challenges.
Impossible. Impossible is inside him. Impossible is inside of impossible, right? I've always tried to, and not just but always tried to figure out the possible in anything, because you just got to keep working hard. It's always possible if you put in the work.
So Clay, we've been talking a lot about mental health and the importance of it, and I think treating oneself is very important. Treating oneself well. Now, I don't know if you're familiar with Parks and Rec, but there was a treat yourself day. You probably, I think it was Ted and Donna had treat yourself day. So Ted and Donna showed up on the Blackwood house, knocked on the door, said, "You have a treat yourself day, Clay. How would you treat yourself? What would you do on a treat yourself day? Whatever you want to do."
Okay, is this food based or is this?
Whatever
Man,
it's a treat yourself day. It's 8 o'clock in the morning. You get it till 10 p.m. at night. What are you going to do?
I want palm trees, a beach, and a cold margarita. That's what I want right there. And maybe some chocolate on the side, but
Okay.
yeah, I like my chocolate. But no, just give me a beach and some palm trees. That's I like that. Nice sandy beach.
Okay. Are you going by yourself? Or are you taking your family?
Probably take my family.
Okay. All right. Well, I had to ask, you know.
I had to answer too.
He's at least taking his wife, maybe not his kids, but.
Yeah, and actually, if I can, I meant to talk about the self-care action plan when it comes to mental health first aid.
Yeah.
You talk about treating yourself, and that's one of the big things we talk about in class too. Is what is your self-care action plan? What do you do in those certain areas, from work to religion to whatever the areas that are important to you? What are those things that you do to help with your own self-care? And have you written it down? Yeah.
Well, what do you find? I'm curious. I'm glad you brought that up because I didn't even think about that. I'm curious, when you bring that up to groups, how many people have actually thought about that, where they've written it down and done it? Is it few and far between? Is that a new concept?
I think it's kind of more of a new concept. I think we naturally do it in some sense. Like if you're a reader, that's you just get into that world and you feel good. Or if you're, you like to go out and garden, that could be that world. You haven't put a kind of a name to it, but that's now we're kind of naming it, I think, in a better sense of the self-care action plan. This is what I do just to feel good and enjoy what I do in my life. But if we can write it down, put it on the fridge, put it somewhere, and that's one of my assignments I make in my class. I make them turn it in. What's your self-care action plan? What are you doing for you? And that's kind of what your hot or not hot or not, but the Plead the Fifth kind of made me think of that. So I thought it was important to put in there.
Yeah, and I know that I've talked about that when I talk with HR folks about what are you doing to make sure that you're staying refreshed. And our local HR chapter just did a yoga day. So our actual monthly meeting, we did a yoga session, which was super cool and very helpful, even just for me. So having those plans, even at your workplace, is really important. I think building on what Clay said. But so going with the whole beachy travel theme, if you could travel in time, maybe not. If you could have dinner with anybody, dead or alive, who would that be, and what would you be eating?
Who I'd have dinner with? Of course, it's going to be with my wife. That's the only person.
No. Okay,
dinner.
hold on. I'm going to amend the question. It can't be your wife. It can't be your kids. Anybody but. Yeah, we got to take that outside of
anybody
that.
but. Okay.
Yes.
Oh, that's a tough one, because I don't know. Sandra Bullock.
There you go.
Right.
That's a great way to combine them.
Right.
Look, I've got one last question. I know Monica will have one more. I can't believe how fast time has gone. But I got to ask you this. I called you a serial coach and a serial athletic coach. You won a state championship. You're the reigning 2A state champs. What have all these years of coaching? How have they transferred into this kind of new thing that you're doing in helping employers and helping workers to understand what skills have you picked up from your years of coaching that are helping you do this?
It's kind of, I'm glad you asked that, because I've always felt like I've had a PhD in psychology. I've coached for 30 years, and I've dealt with many athletes going through just things, and sometimes it's just player and player or mad at each other. I've had to put players sit down and have conversations with each other. But I think just the people piece, and I've always been a people person, to understand, try to understand how people operate and how to read people when they're having bad days. I think that's been a big help in trying to help make sure that they're having a good experience. And that's, I think those things are all relatable to the mental health first aid and just being around people. The more I'm around people, the more I kind of just see that stuff. And like I tell everybody, I say this all the time in class, I'm a people person. I like to watch people, like to kind of dissect what they're doing, and it just my nature. And you can see things that could be potential challenges, or could be just, things that are good, or, so, I think that's really helped enhance that. Because I'm always around people, and how do I read the room, basically, best I can.
So, coaching, at least the way that I see it portrayed between both you and Dan, because I've seen his coaching style as well, is very similar to trying to lead a work team, right? And everybody's cohesive and together. And there are a lot of things that can be pulled from the workplace and transferred to an athletic team. There are tons of studies that talk about how successful athletes are in their professional life afterwards, not professional sports, but in their jobs. But also, talk about some of the things, because you had such a successful season this year with softball. Talk about some of the things that you did to build the team aspect.
Yeah, and I tried to talk about it throughout most of the year, that we had such good talent, from 1 to 32. Excuse me, when we started. Excuse me. And we talked about that a lot, and I kept talking about that we need to make sure we build team, make sure we build that team camaraderie, that we believe in each other. And some people will be on the field, some people won't. And how do we play those roles the best we can? We did this year. We, with the help of my wife and my daughter, and my daughter kind of kicked me to make this happen this year. We did what we call color wars, and I stole it from a former coaching friend of mine that has coached with me before, and we modified it for softball. Just basically came up and made teams of all the girls and put them into a color, and they had to do just basically challenges. Once a week we did a challenge as their little team green or team yellow or team orange, and it was funny. It was engaging. They had to bake a cake and present it like cake wars to the coaches. We were the color wars umpires, and we had bright shirts and tie-dye shirts and stuff, and they had to learn some presenting skills. They had to practice getting together and having good communication with maybe people they don't hang out with, people not on their same team, varsity or JV. And it really, I think, helped us kind of get over that hump, to get to where we got to, and started to build that team unit, and understand that it's not just one person that's going to get us there. It's all 32 or however many's on the roster for the whole squad, the whole program, not just one team. And even the coaches included. So we made fools of ourselves as coaches sometimes, and that's okay. Just doing lots of little different things, riding little tiny bikes on a track, on the dirt, and falling and laughing and all that fun stuff to try to make it different. And that is not just all about taking ground balls or shooting hoops, or sometimes it's about taking a break from that and just focusing on being youthful and having fun and enjoying what you're doing.
All right, Clay, thank you so much for being our guest here on the Shrimp Tank. For our listeners that want to get in touch with you and learn a little bit more about mental health first aid or anything else that you have an interest in, how would they get that information? Where would they go?
The best place is go to the westsoundworkforce.com, right? And we have a page there about the information for either CPR or mental health first aid, and we can set up a training for me to come out and do either one, and happy to have conversations with you about helping your company or your business or your friends, however you want to set one up. Before I'm done, I'm going to remind people that you can text 988 for the suicide line. It's the newest one that's out, 988, and there's also a national suicide line as well. I don't know the number off the top of my head, but 988 is the easiest one to remember.
Perfect. Thank you. I meant to bring that up earlier. Make sure you check out all of the replays on shrimptankpodcast.com/Seattle, and wherever you get your podcasts, iHeart, Apple, Google, Spotify, Stitcher, any of them really. Please follow us on our show's social media page as well on YouTube, Facebook, and Instagram.
So Clay, thank you for being here. And I got a question. You just said something that created a question, and it's my podcast. So I'm going to go ahead and ask a question. I can do what I want. I'm going to change the rules. you said something about families. Is this something that, let's just say you have a family, and maybe it's a larger family unit. Maybe there's a lot of siblings involved, and maybe they're going through some challenges, and I've seen it. We've experienced it with aging parents, or maybe a death in the family, things like that. Is this something that you can teach families? You can put them through this course? Maybe not. Maybe everybody can't do 8 hours, but is there something that can be done there?
The course itself, unfortunately, is structured for the fidelity of it, and it's a long course.
Yeah.
So I mean, I think definitely you could get some families, the adults. The one I teach currently is meant for adults to help adults. They are working on a youth program as well, but no, I think definitely if you had some, enough people that minimum class I can do is 5 for when it comes to first aid certificate.
Yeah.
But
okay. Well, I just thought it was interesting.
Yeah.
From the, maybe you break it up into a couple different sessions to get the full 8 hours in. But I'm just wondering, because there's somebody might need that. So like I said, you said that.
Yeah.
I hadn't thought about that, and it came up. So there you go. I'm glad you're all probably glad you'll stay until the end to hear that. Clay, thank you very much. Monica, thank you. We're not going to have a show next week. Not Monica, Michelle Baumberger's on vacation, and I actually have a Rotary thing that I've got to do next week. We're picking up the next foreign exchange student for our club. So we're going to take a week off in August. We'll be back on August 30th with our co-host, Michelle Baumberger. In the meantime, be safe, and that includes mentally. Be well, and that includes mentally. And be prosperous, because until next week, and in this case, 2 weeks, the shrimp is back in the tank. So long.
I've been feeling like a shark in a shrimp tank. Big fish, small pond.